Time to talk science with Nate.
Team, some could be thinking that Victoria has become the earthquake centre of Australia. Thousands of people reported tremors on the weekend after a magnitude 5 earthquake and aftershocks struck near the Great Ocean Road early hours of Sunday morning. I thought we'd better find out what's going on in Victoria right now. So I'm joined by earthquake geologist at Melbourne Seismology Research Centre, Dr. Dee Ninis. Dee, welcome to News Breakfast.
Thank you.
First of all, did you feel it?
I slept through it.
Oh, me too, me too. Okay, so tell us what happened.
Right, so there was a magnitude 5.1 earthquake in the Otways, and it was felt locally, obviously, and also across the state. I think Geoscience Australia received something like 8,000 plus felt reports from as far away as 500 kilometres from the epicentre.
Right, so we're not sitting on a fault line, although that picture we were just showing, that was like a series of like little faults going through Victoria. What's happening underground that's causing this?
Right, so we know of a number of neotectonic faults. So neotectonic means that young, basically geologically young faults in that region. We don't know what fault that earthquake happened on, whether it was one of those or another fault altogether.
Okay, so when you say young, how young?
Right, so we define neotectonic as something that's about 5 million years old.
Yeah, so just a baby, really.
So I know that sounds really old, but geologically speaking, 5 million years is quite young. The Otway Ranges are actually quite a young geological feature. They're only about 5 million years old. So they have developed from uplift. So basically, earthquake after earthquake after earthquake over millions of years, uplifting these the ranges.
Right. Now, everybody remembers the big earthquake that happened in near Melbourne, to the northeast. How many? It was years ago now.
2021, September, the Woods Point 5.9, yeah.
And we've been feeling aftershocks from that, I can't believe, for years now.
Yeah, they're ongoing, yeah.
Is this related?
No. Look.
No, with a caveat.
To work out, it's not part of that aftershock sequence, is the short answer. To work out whether it is somehow related in terms of a change in stress in the crust, you'd have to do a whole lot of modelling. We need to, know a lot more about what the stress within the crust and where each of those faults were in terms of how close they were to rupture. But basically, the short answer would be it doesn't need to be related for us to have this earthquake in the Otways. We don't need the Woods Point earthquake to explain the Otway earthquake. Victoria probably has a magnitude 5 and above earthquake about once every 7 years. And I know Woods Point was only a few years ago, but they're not equally spaced, right? They're not, that's on average once every 7 years or so.
Right, so we can expect more, obviously on that once every 7 years sort of schedule, but how unusual is it to get this sort of clustering?
No, it's not at all unusual. Yeah, like I said, so that's just an average.
Yeah.
There have been times in the past where there seems to have been more earthquakes over a few years and then it quietens down, so it's not at all unusual, no.
Right. Is there anything people should be doing to prepare or to figure out if they're in a place that's more likely to get, and not just here in Victoria, but around Australia, because we've got a few hotspots, right?
So I mean, earthquakes, first of all, earthquakes can happen anywhere in Australia, but there are regions that are more seismically active than other regions. Southeast Australia is one of those, so Victoria is one of those regions. The Flinders Ranges is another region. Southwest Western Australia is another, and Northwest Western Australia. So I think the best thing to do is to just know that we can get them. The Woods Point earthquake 5.9 was the largest we've had in Victoria, but in the geological record there's evidence for up to magnitude 7 or so earthquakes.
Wow.
So that's what we think Australia can host, sort of low 7s. But just know what to do. If you're indoors, drop cover, hold on.
Yeah, so the thing with the scale as well of magnitudes, like 7 sounds like it's not that much more than 5, but it's actually a heck of a lot more, isn't it?
Yeah, so if we want to compare the Woods Point earthquake and the Otways earthquake, it's almost a magnitude difference. The Woods Point earthquake released 30 times more energy.
Yeah,
it was 10 times larger, and what we mean when we say that was the area of the fault that ruptures was like about 10 kilometres by 10 kilometres, whereas the area of the fault that ruptured for the Otways earthquake was about 3 kilometres by 3 kilometres.
So if we were to get a 7...
Yeah, yeah.
That's a heck of a lot bigger.
That's big, yeah.
Wow.
That's big.
Dee, thank you so much for taking us through all of that. It's really weird when the Earth moves. I'm glad we've got experts on hand to let us know exactly what's going on.
No trouble. Thanks for inviting me.